Learn to write. I'm dead serious. Like, I'm dead serious about that. Because writing is formalized thinking. And so the way you write is, first of all, you need a problem. Because why write if you don't have a problem? So this is good advice if you're just writing an essay, by the way, for your classes. It's like, pick a bloody problem that was, well, you need to have something to say about the problem. Well, so, reading. Reading is really good for that. Read as much as you can. Get your hands on that addresses the problem. Okay, so now you know a bunch of things, or at least provisionally know them. You at least have access to them. Well, now you start sorting through it. It's like, okay, well, maybe I need to summarize what I've learned, and then I need to iron out the contradictions between what I've learned, and I need to elegantly formulate that, and I need to get my word choice right, and my phrase choice right, and my sentence choice right, and I need to organize the sentences into proper paragraphs, and the paragraphs into proper sequence so that I have a coherent argument. And at the same time, what you're doing is you're integrating your own personality at the highest and most abstract level of organization, and you're sharpening your tools, and you're putting yourself straight because you're learning to think. You learn to do that by writing. And so I would say, pick some hard problems and learn to write very, very carefully. And when I say pay attention to the word, I mean that. Pick the right words. Organize them into the right phrases. Get your sentences straight. Like when I wrote my first book, Maps of Meaning, I believe I wrote every sentence in that book 50 times. 50 variants of every sentence. I'd read it once, I'd read it again, I'd read it again, I'd read it again, and I'd have a little competition. Which sentence is better? Which sentence is better? I'd pick that sentence. Do the same with the paragraphs. Over many, many years, you hone your words. They're the most powerful thing about you, bar none. If you are an effective writer and speaker and communicator, you have all the authority and competence that there is. And so you're at university. Maybe you're taking a humanities degree. Well, what's the humanities degree for? It's to teach you how to think. You learn to think by writing. Now there's more to read, to speak, and all of that, but the best thing you can do is read and write every day, a couple of hours every day. Write about things you find important, and see if you can discover what you believe to be true. And that'll build you a foundation, and it's unbelievably practical. Like if you look at people who are phenomenally successful across life, there's various reasons, but one of them is that they're unbelievably good at articulating what they're aiming at, and strategizing and negotiating and enticing people with a vision forward. It's like, get your words together, man. That makes you unstoppable. And that's the core of the humanities, that idea. Get your words together. Make yourself an articulate creature, and then you're deadly in the best possible way. So, and take that seriously. And I'll end with something too. You students, you might think in your more cynical moments that you have to offer your professors what they want and gerrymander the content of your language to suit their predilections, or what you consider to be their predilections. First of all, it's a very small minority of professors who are corrupt enough to punish you for producing a high-quality essay that they don't agree with. And though that's reprehensible, but it doesn't happen very often. But more importantly, it's the highest academic sin to do that. Because what you're here to do is to learn to find your true voice. And every time you deviate from that for expedient reasons, you corrupt yourself. And not in a trivial way, because when you formulate your arguments, that becomes a permanent part of your character. You carry that with you. It becomes part of the structure through which you view the world, and it guides your actions. And so you hold your words pristine, and you work in a dedicated way to become as articulate and clear as you can possibly become. Character, you carry that with you. And there's nothing that's more practical and noble than that at the same time. That's why the humanities are so valuable. You think, well, what good is a humanities degree? It's like, well, you come out of here able to speak and think and write, no matter where you go, like you're headed for the pinnacle, and hopefully in a way that's positive for everyone. So that's what I would recommend. I'm a great admirer of the humanities, and of the universities. I mean, the humanities, you learn to be a citizen through the humanities. The humanities are at the core of Western culture. If they go, we're in trouble. So the problem is that what's manifesting itself as the humanities in the universities is no longer the humanities. It's something almost virtually the opposite of that. And so when I tell people not to go to humanities courses in the universities, it's with a very heavy heart, believe me. Now the question is, where do you go instead? Well, that's a good question. You can always read. One of the things that's really cool about Amazon is all the great books are free. They're literally free. You can go download them on your Kindle for nothing. The copyright has expired, and people have been putting electronic versions online, so the great books of the Western world, and even many of the great books of the 20th century, are now available completely for free. Well, so you can read them. There's lots of information to be garnered now on YouTube, and that's really going to explode over the next 10 years. And I mean, one of the things I want to work on, probably over the next 10 years, is to set up a humanities university online. And I'm starting to work, I already have some programs online. They're called self-authoring programs, and they help people write. And partly, we designed them to help people learn to write, as well as to help them write about themselves. So the self-authoring programs help people write an autobiography and analyze their personality, faults and virtues, and lay out a future for themselves. And when we've had students do that, do the future authoring program, it's so cool. What happened was that the probability that they would stay in school went up by about 30%. But something even cooler happened. It worked best for the worst performing students. So we did a lot of it in Holland at a business school called Erasmus. There's a school of management, Rotterdam School of Management at Erasmus University. And we ran several, I think it's about 10,000 people happened through the future authoring program now. And what happened, if you looked at the academic performance of the students, the Dutch women, the native Dutch women, were at the pinnacle. And then it was the Dutch men below them. Now, the women were in a minority, and they were probably a little more highly selected, right? So maybe that accounted for the performance gap. And then underneath that, there was female non-Western ethnic minority immigrants. And then below that were male non-Western ethnic minority immigrants. And there was a massive gap between the Dutch women and the male non-Western minority immigrants. Like a performance gap of about 80%. A massive gap. Within 2 years after writing the future authoring program, the male non-ethnic Western minority students passed the Dutch students. Yeah, and some of them didn't even remember that they had done the future authoring, like a performance exercise. And we replicated that at Mohawk College just a while back. Same thing. The young men who went to Mohawk College, they did this exercise in the summer just before they went to college. They only took about an hour to write out their future. It's not that long to think about your whole future. And what happened was that the young men who had the worst grades in school, who were in non-career oriented trajectories, had a retention improvement of about 40%. So yeah, so that was just like, we were just thrilled about that. So the reason I'm telling you all of this story, apart from the fact that it's vaguely interesting, is that we are experimenting with technologies to teach people how to write. Now normally the way you're taught how to write is by having someone edit your writing, but that's prohibitively expensive. I don't think it can be transformed in something that's available on a mass basis. And so what we're trying to do is to break down the process of writing into its requisite steps. That's kind of what behavioral psychologists do. We've done that already a bit with this essay writing format. And then to sort of teach people what the mechanics of writing actually are, and then maybe to try to figure out how to crowdsource editing, so that many people can participate in the process. But we'd like to set up an online humanities university over the next 10 years. And since the universities have abandoned their intellectual property, there's no reason not to just move in and take it, as far as I can tell. My colleagues and I developed this program online to help people do that, to write through their life. So the past authoring program helps people write an autobiography. Who the hell am I anyways? And you think you know, but you don't, because you're complicated. And then the present authoring program helps you identify your faults and your virtues by your own definition. It's not imposed on you. It's a guided process of exploration. And then the future authoring program helps you figure out, well, if you could have what you wanted, hypothetically, what would that actually be? And yes, it's very much worth asking yourself that question, because you're always searching for that anyways, even negatively, because your conscience will torment you for the things you're not doing. Okay, well, not doing in relationship to what? Well, in relationship to the implicit ideal of your conscience. Well, what is that? And the answer is, well, you don't know. And so if you're just allowing yourself to be tortured into submission, then you're at the mercy of some ideal that you don't know. And maybe you wouldn't want to pursue if you actually knew. That's why Carl Jung said, everyone lives out a myth, but virtually no one knows what myth they're living. And maybe it's a tragedy. Maybe you don't want it to be a tragedy. And on the question, what do you want? That's a really deep question. That's a serious question. What is it that you should value? And people say, well, being happy. They don't even mean that, by the way. If you decompose what people mean when they say they want to be happy, what it turns out they actually mean is they don't want to be miserable. They're way more concerned with avoiding suffering than they are with pursuing, enthusiastic, positive emotion. So even the statement, I want to be happy, is actually not an accurate reflection of what it is that you want.
Does that not show just how little of our own motivations we get to see? We're so good at deception that we deceive ourselves before we deceive anybody else. We get to see this tiny, tiny little sliver of just how little of our own motivations we get to see. We're so good at why we are here, why we do the things we do, why we think the things we think. I saw this quote today from Robert Wright that said, emotions are the executioner of our genes, or the executor of our genes. All that they're there is to just enact what our biological imperative wants. And then we get to glimpse them as they run past on the way to doing a thing. And we believe that we're peering into the source code of our own mind. That's not the case.
Well, we're definitely not transparent to ourselves by any stretch of the imagination. We wouldn't have to spend decades studying psychology if we were transparent. Like we're tremendously mysterious to ourselves. One of the things we do in the self-authoring program, in the future authoring program, is say, well, if you deteriorated according to your own vices, and that got out of hand, what would that look like 5 years down the road? Everyone knows.
Oh, yeah.
Some people flirt with alcoholism or drug abuse or
sex addiction.
Yes. That's right. Fractured relationships.
Snacks, even candy, whatever.
And then, you have a sense in your mind of what you'd be like if you let yourself go.
Oh,
well,
I'd be sick, man. I'd be under a bridge or something. I'd probably be behind living behind a Tim Hortons or some, some type of place. I'm trying to make it local to you, but I'd be living, I'd just be doing drugs or just probably listening to Aerosmith. I'd be outdoors, I bet, no real home. I'd have no family.
Yeah, so for you, it's a vision of homelessness and substance abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you got to ask yourself, okay, think about that. Is that what you want? And think about it. Imagine that That's what awaits you. Well, then you have a better thing to be afraid of. It's like, afraid as I am of gripping my own destiny, here's the alternative.
Right, and now you've created a reality of what that looks like. So now you have something to battle against, right?
Yes, exactly. And you need to, part of being motivated is to be afraid of the proper things. Afraid as you might be of success, and fair enough, it's possible that you should be more afraid of stagnation and failure. But you have to make those things real for you before they have any power.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm even realizing that if I don't make the lowest, if I don't make the reality of what could happen if I don't take care of myself, and if I were to devolve and disintegrate into my worst place, if I don't make that a reality, it almost lets me stay in the fog even more, because now even the end hasn't even been created. I've left it all just so vague that I can just kind of meander around. It's like it reminds me a little bit. I didn't want to quit smoking for a while, because if I quit smoking, then I would have to actually then do something else good for myself, or I would have to then be a non-smoker, and a non-smoker might then go for a run, or he might then achieve a different goal. So one of the reasons I realized for a while that I didn't quit smoking was because if I was real honest with myself, I wanted to always have an excuse of why I couldn't do other stuff.